Welcome to LED Live, the show where we use the light of Christ to expose the darkness found in media and our culture today. And we are coming to the end of 2019, guys. We've been doing this show for 7 months.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
We put out some content.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've talked about everything from topics to popular movies to even full-on theological discussions.
Yeah.
And a lot of you have been along for the ride from since the beginning. And we thank you so much for your support, from watching videos to commenting on them, having discussions with us, from buying our merch Mikey is representing right now, and sending us gifts as well. We just thank you for each and every contribution and the love that you've shown to us. And this LED Live episode is no different than the rest. We are hitting some tough, trendy topics. And I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
My big brothers, how far would you go? How far would you go to protect your family?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
So this week there was a trending hashtag on Twitter, and it was called RIP Nick Cannon. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, did he die? Like, did you guys see the trend?
I didn't see the trend.
No, so you saw nothing about it.
I mean, I'm just random here and there. I see the whole thing about there's a battle between Eminem and Nick Cannon.
Dude, it was trending for days. And it's actually supporters or fans of Eminem that started it.
Okay.
And what's so hilarious actually is that they spelt Nick Cannon's name wrong. Instead of two
Purposeful, you
N's.
think?
I think so.
Interesting.
It may not have been. I don't know
we don't
who
even
started
know you.
it.
We're going to leave out some of your letters.
Nick Canyon.
Yeah, instead of C-A-N-N-O-N, it's just C-A-N-O-N.
Like the camera.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was pretty funny. But that's in response to a diss track that Nick Cannon put out, directed towards Eminem. This has actually been like a 10-year feud between the two of them.
Wow, so why did he start the diss track?
Well, it's actually surrounded by one person. Can you guess who? Like
Eminem?
Both people are
I bet you it's about Nick Cannon's girlfriend or wife.
girlfriend turned wife. Yes, Mariah Carey. That's who it's about.
Don't talk about my wife.
Yeah, that's right.
How it started is Eminem says that he dated Mariah Carey back in the early 2000s, and Mariah denies it. So Eminem didn't really like that very much, so he went to, I mean, he's a rapper, so he went and took to his music and said some things about Mariah. And by this time, Nick Cannon had married Mariah, so of course he's taking it personally.
Right.
And Nick Cannon, he's dabbled in rap, but he's not really known for being a rapper. He's more of a comedian and a talk show host and an actor as well in his own right. He just took to his blog and took shots at Eminem. But Mariah went ahead and actually made a whole song in defense of herself.
Oh, wow.
Have you guys listened to Obsessed? Do you guys remember that song? Why Are You So Obsessed With Me?
So.
No?
That was
really?
about Eminem?
Yeah, that was about Eminem.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Years passed. I mean, this has been going for a while. And Eminem recently was on a song with Fat Joe, and he took shots at Mariah again. Now Nick Cannon is like, okay, I'm actually gonna release a song. He did not release just one, but 2 diss tracks targeted towards Eminem. He also took shots at his family. Now, if there's one thing that any Eminem fan knows is that Eminem has this policy: don't talk about my family, or else I will take shots back. And we see this in past beefs that he had with other people, where it's popular opinion that he pretty much destroyed his attackers. Now, we're not going to go and read lyrics and his posts and stuff, because that's not really for the show or appropriate in any way.
Right.
But the topic
There's
itself.
a lot of explanatories that you need to
Exactly.
be wary of if you look at those battles.
But the topic itself was interesting, and I kind of want to expand it, not just talking about verbal attacks against people's families, but also physical attacks, just attacks in general. And the question is, what do you do as a Christian man who has a family? How far would you go to protect your loved ones?
It's interesting, like in the public, like these people live very public lives. So, it's not something that you just, I mean, the way I would solve it would be go straight to the person, kind of take the Matthew 18 approach and, hey, this is something that I disagree with, but in the public, they're releasing things that are tied to their record labels, and all of this, I think, fuels people. I mean, you know, these battles have made people more famous.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
I
true.
say that I don't, maybe not in a biblical sense, but at least they're doing it through art instead of just, I don't know, really battling each other in real life.
right,
And you got to wonder if this is for promotion.
right,
You know?
right,
Like if something popular is coming out, so they
Right.
want to get people talking about them already.
right,
Create
right.
controversy.
Right off the bat, like you said, I was actually unaware that Nick Cannon was even in the music industry. I mean, I've always seen him as a host or something on TV. So for him to you know, this maybe puts him on the map as an artist. I don't know, you know.
It doesn't. People hated the track, actually.
Okay.
So there's this expectation from the world that Christians should just sit back and take it, you
Turn the
know?
other cheek.
And exactly, and it goes hand in hand with the idea that Christians are soft or pushovers, or people can walk all over Christians. What do you guys think about that?
You know, there's a lot of attack towards Christians, but if you just look at the basis of what Christianity is and supposed to be about, I mean, we do preach a turn the other cheek message. So I think, you know, if you want to be Christ-like, I don't know if necessarily like battling it out publicly would be considered in the theology of what it means to be a Christian. I don't know.
It's a real tough one, you know, because I've always wondered that myself, like, should I have a gun for self-defense, or if somebody breaks in my house, am I supposed to turn the other cheek? Or, I mean, this is really kind of controversial.
It's true. About 70% of Americans own guns. Sorry, about 70% of Americans who own guns own it for self-defense, for protection. And, you know, parents send their kids for martial arts trainings. And I know for me, my family has encouraged me to actually get a taser because I'm living on my own in a different state from them, so they have their concerns as well. And, you know, there are a plethora of Bible texts that with God promising to protect his people, not just from spiritual attacks, but from physical attacks as well. But yet we hear in the news and in the media about attacks and actually deaths that actually seem a little bit, that could have been prevented if the people were more equipped to defend themselves.
Look at the story of Peter when they're in the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, he clearly whips out a sword and chops off the ear of the high priest's servant, right? So
But
even
didn't Jesus say, live by the sword, die by the sword?
he did, but think about it in terms of why would you carry a sword then? You know what I mean?
To cut some sticks down, or, I mean, it's a tool, right?
I guess. I mean, with a sword, I don't know. Would you do it with a knife?
Go through the woods, you
Like a
know?
machete?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe that's
Cut
lost
your
in
bread.
translation a little bit. You know, maybe it was a pocket knife that he had.
It's
I don't
true,
know.
like people are taking action, but the Bible has texts that advises to, you know, leave it up to God in that sense. But are these texts being misinterpreted or even misapplied?
I think it's hard to understand the cultural, you know, like where we would carry around a pocket knife because we like whittling with wood or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like years of translation and all sorts of, you know, differences of how we need to carry around a knife today or something isn't quite as a necessity as maybe it was back then. So it's like for us to, we're applying it to the way that we think about those things today. It's hard to kind of get a sense of what was it really like for the Hebrew life, you know, that lived out of the cities. Who knows?
Okay, well, let's bring it back to today. If you were in either of these two artists' positions and someone has, you know, taken to art, to music, and sent direct shots against you and your family, talking about your wife and also your children, which is exactly what Nick Cannon did. I'm just curious, how would you guys respond? Have you ever thought about these things as parents, as husbands?
One thing I kind of like to do, and it works, is to return evil with good, kill them with kindness type thing. So anytime in the past and this is even before I was a Christian, it's just a technique that works. But if somebody's like upset with you, you just kind of be like real chill about it, and it just kind of like, I don't know, it kind of makes them angrier, but then it kind of diffuses it too. And I would say maybe, you know, if something like that happened to me, I would probably just make a response video or something and just be like, this is really immature, you know, like we should handle this like man, and if you got some problems, let's talk about it. I mean, to make a song blasting on my children, that's kind of weak, you know, it's kind of below the belt. I'd just put it like that probably.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think if you did approach that individual and you know, you were to forgive them and love on them, like you said, it would probably cease from that point to balloon into something else, you know, whereas if you just do a public shaming back, you know, it could go back and forth, and then it could be like, you know, well, you do this and this and this and this in your ministry and blah, 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 and then it could just get kind of out of hand, where I think in Nick Cannon and Eminem's case, if literally Nick Cannon were to go to Eminem and be like, I love you, man, you know, like this is not right, and you know, let's figure out how to get past this or whatever like this.
Right.
It probably wouldn't go anywhere. It would cease at that point.
Yeah, how could you continue to just hate on this person?
Yeah,
that's
I don't think
forgiving
Eminem
you,
would
you
be
know?
continuing to release things against him or vice versa if he did that. So I think kind of like publicly making a diss track or something like that is throwing gasoline on the problem.
So to the question, how does a Christian man reconcile being a protector of his household with also leaving vengeance for the Lord? Many believe that they're justified in their actions because it's a response to a wrong, you know, an eye for an eye, like Exodus 21 is saying. But I've learned that how you do something matters just as much as what you do, right? So there's a right and a wrong way to do anything, really. And I feel like God has no problem with us defending ourselves. It's how we defend ourselves that he pays keen attention to. Take Romans 12 into consideration, right? It says, do not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good, which is what you brought up, Mikey. So it's telling us to overcome, like we should be doing these things, but do it in such a way that is good and that glorifies God. But the question is, what does that look like?
Yeah.
You know, what does glorifying God in a situation where there's a lot of tension look like? And I have some scenarios that I want to throw at you guys, and maybe you can help the viewers, because these are like real life things that happen actually day to day.
I've thought about this stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Right, whether it be bowling or whatever, you know.
Exactly, a fight breaks out.
Yeah, people deal with getting dissed all the time.
So I have 3 here. Here's the first one. Let's go back to middle school, okay?
Okay.
If you see your little brother get punched in the face on the playground. Now, this is one of 3 incidents where an older student hurts him. How do you respond?
One of 3 incidents. Like this is the 3rd time? it's happened?
Exactly.
So you are the older brother in this situation.
And you're seeing your younger brother being punched and hit on.
I would definitely defend him in the way of removing him from any more physical altercations. You know, I would try as best as possible to stop the situation from progressing into something where someone could get hurt. You know, I probably wouldn't necessarily engage in a fight and start throwing blows, you know, back at them, and definitely try to verbally talk it out. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem jumping in the middle of something like this and stopping it and separating it, you know. That's how I'd treat it.
Keith, I'd like to bring up martial arts in that there's a way to fight someone without actually fighting someone, kind of like to, what is it? Like,
disarm them.
Right, exactly. They throw a punch and you're able to not get hit and also restrain them in such a way that they actually stop. Do you think that training is good for parents to enroll their young people in, or?
I think there's a term for that called tap out. You know, you make them on the ground and make them tap out.
No, I don't. And people probably hate on me for this, but being in it, observing it, coming out of it, the thing that I always tell people is martial arts training is inconsistent with martial arts philosophy. So philosophy is, you know, try not to hurt people, do everything you can to get away from being in a fight, you know. And you know, in kung fu, you know, there's like a hierarchy. You know, maim before cripple, cripple before kill. You know, this kind of thing. But when you're training, even I remember in my earliest lessons, I mean, you're learning how to break a neck right off the bat.
Wow.
You know, it's block the punch, wrap the neck, snap. You know, I mean, that's what you're training for. So if you're training to do that, and you're training based off of a reaction, it's the first thing that you're going to do, because it's like that muscle memory, it's that reflex. Somebody throws a punch, you just start moving. And you could easily, you know, bust somebody's arm, you know, hyperextension, bust the knee, hyperextension, you know, and these are injuries that take I mean, they can affect somebody for the rest of their life. And if you're training to kill somebody, you know, and you're not, because when somebody's going to throw a punch or a kick at you, you're not sitting there going, I wonder what I should do, you know.
Right.
You just start moving, and so next thing you know, somebody's on the ground, they're hurt, they're injured, worst case scenario, you know, they're dead. You are supposed to, if you are a black belt, you're supposed to have your body, your hands, whatever, registered with law enforcement, because you are considered a deadly weapon just by yourself, like without a gun or without anything else. So I say no, and to kind of hash that out a little more, I say no because a lot of people never make it that far. They don't make it to black belt. Oftentimes it takes years, and they don't have that discipline. They don't have the time, the money, the energy, whatever it is, to make it to that point. And when you get to black belt, now you're just starting to learn. Okay, so all this other stuff, you're learning how to punch, but after you make your black belt, you kind of revisit everything back from the beginning. And you start to take a step back and say, okay, now this is what we taught you. Now we're going to teach you everything almost all over again in light of being a black belt, in light of this new philosophy. And you start to really hone everything and develop, you know, kind of anew. You go back and revisit those beginning lessons. But most people, when they're getting into it, if you don't know how to punch, if you don't know like how to form your fist and like what knuckles to lead with, you're going to break your hand. I mean, so a lot of people, they get into this stuff and they kind of halfway know what they're doing, but there's a lot of variables, you know. I mean, a 90-pound girl up against some guy that weighs like 250, it's going to be, you would have to be an upper level black belt to make it out of that situation, because he's just too big. All you got to do is fall on you.
Right.
So, but I say no for the philosophy part, because you're teaching somebody to react and to kill and to hurt and to injure, even though mentally you're telling them, don't do that. You want to try to not do that. So, which one wins out? Yeah. You know, that's something everybody has to weigh in on, is what wins out.
Do you have an alternative then?
I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, a lot of people say guns, you know, that's I guess one solution if you want to defend yourself. I'm not a person who chooses to carry a gun. I don't feel that need. I guess probably the biggest situation we think about for self-defense is women and small children. Yeah. I mean, pretty much every other scenario, like most guys figure, okay, I can pretty well handle myself in most situations, you know, either to get out of it or to walk away, or if I've got to go toe to toe, you know, I can take care of myself. But women and small children are more of a factor. I don't know. I mean, I haven't taught my own children martial arts. So far, you know, by the grace of God, everything's been fine. Right. People don't generally just jump you. That doesn't just generally happen. You know, most things are provoked.
That's right.
When my dad was training in the martial arts, when he would go get a black belt, he would go to the bar and pick a fight, just so he could use his training.
Wow.
If you're not provoking people, most people don't have a reason to just, you know, walk up and punch you in the face or kick you in the shin or whatever. Yeah. So if you live a very peaceful life and don't provoke people, and you know, a lot of, you know, as far as women, it's like if you're concerned, well, try as much as possible not to go someplace alone. You know, if you're a young lady on a college campus, walk with somebody at night if it's a concern. You know, carry some pepper spray. It's very effective. You know, it's not going to hurt the person in the long run. It's going to sting. It's going to burn, but you're not going to hurt them. And you know, hopefully you can get out of the situation. And another thing is, if you're a young lady, you know, another example, I think of college as like a high probability time. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're inebriated and there's all these guys around, and all of a sudden you lose your judgment, you lose your reasoning, and you are susceptible, or you do things that you regret later, or you can't even remember what happened, you know? So I think there's things people can do to help themselves.
it's interesting thinking of this Nick Cannon thing. You said something kind of interesting, that you provoke a lot of the times an engagement like that. I don't know. I kind of have a hard time thinking that all of a sudden Eminem's going to make up something that ridiculous and put it out in public if there's just zero truth to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think as well, when Nick Cannon's trying to defend her honor, and you sometimes can actually make the situation worse because you're just throwing things out there, and it's like there may be some truth to that. So you probably don't want to deal with things like that in a public setting because you're kind of inviting that fight.
Yeah. For this scenario with an older brother trying to protect the younger brother, I would say to avoid a physical altercation as much as possible. That saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a complete lie.
Yeah.
I'll probably, as an older sibling, step in and try to pull them away and say, listen, if you ever touch my sibling again, there will be problems. Yeah, I don't have to actually make an actual detailed threat, but just to instill some kind of fear, some authority, to kind of, diffuse the whole situation. I think that might be the... You did that? I
did that. My little brother was getting picked on, and I mean, the kid was my size, and he was several years younger, big kid. And, I heard about it, and it had kept on going, and after school, on the way home, not on school property, I confronted the kid, and I was like, look, you pick on my little brother anymore, you're going to have me to deal with,
There you go.
And that, that I think took care of it, but...
Yeah.
And after that, I think they wound up becoming friends. But
awesome. See, there's
it's a different time and place, a different mindset. I don't think I had started training in the martial arts yet, but I was going to defend my little brother.
Mm-hmm. All right, second one. Your wife comes home and says that her boss took a pass at her at work that led to an embarrassing situation in front of her colleagues. What do you do?
He's a dead man.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, dude.
Yeah, that's a really tough situation. I actually know somebody that this has happened to, and the boss really took advantage of the woman, and ended up in a bad situation. So yeah, it's like I first would have a talk with the wife if that kind of a situation is even remotely going to happen. Then there's too many other employers you can go work for. I don't care how good the job is to place yourself voluntarily kind of in a situation that could go bad, and sometimes
I agree.
It's bad.
But I think I would take different steps. And I would talk to my wife for sure first, but I don't think I would send her to work somewhere else, because if that's going on at that workplace, you're almost doing an injustice leaving the situation to continue on. And personally, if there's multiple witnesses, that's perfect to get that guy busted and get him out. Not that I want to ruin somebody's career, but that's uncalled for. And there are many legal protections these days. I would say get rid of him, Your wife should be able to work wherever without that kind of pressure.
Yeah. It's true.
Get rid of that guy. He's the one that needs to reevaluate his career.
Agreed. It sounds like a call to kind of sit down and think things through, have conversations, not just be angry, go on the job.
My first thought was we're going to retire because we're suing. And
right.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the first thought that crossed my mind was to have a little talk with him, but then it's then what happens?
But you can get in trouble for getting countersued and all that, for threatening somebody like that.
What I'm saying.
That's why you pick up the phone and you call cousin Vinny.
Are you Italian?
Yo, Vinny.
One more time.
Yeah, I think you're better off saying less in a corporate, workplace situation, and let HR take care of it.
The alarm goes off in your home one night, and as you go downstairs to check it out, you run into the perp. You are standing between him and the door. What do you do?
You grab the nearest golf club, baseball bat. If somebody is inside of your home, I feel a duty to protect my family. Yeah, I think you would react to whatever you could at that situation because, they're scared too. Something could go bad. If they have a weapon, they don't want to get caught. So in the wake of that could be a very dangerous situation. So you know, I think you'd want to react quickly in that situation.
You're almost out of options because you're not like, give me 1 second, the cops will be here in any minute. You know?
Right.
Right.
What can you do except fight or something?
Yeah. I think most people, you know, they don't probably want to get into an altercation. They don't want something terrible to happen. So I think if you react quickly as well, that may scare them off and, you know, allow them to exit. But yeah, if I was in between the door and this person, I would quickly go to, you know, something in the room that you could take that would help defend yourself.
I used to sleep with a staff in the room.
Golf
That way, if I had, I mean, no, it's a long staff that you use in martial arts. They're custom. They're supposed to be 2 inches taller than you are. So I had mine. I'd keep it by the door. If not that, I had a sword I used to keep nearby.
My mom keeps maybe I shouldn't put that on blast, but she keeps a machete in the house.
I was gonna say that's the weapon I have in my home is a machete and a baseball bat.
I don't keep either anymore.
Well, I don't either. I did have it like under my bed or something, but now it's just wherever it happens to be.
And I think location plays a role as well. We're more in kind of like a country setting, and compared to more urban, where you know there's more higher rates of crime.
My brother had a teacher in college. He was a biology teacher, and he would go down to South America and go on these biology trips. And they were in a boat in the Amazon, and they were just floating along. And all of a sudden, some natives jumped out of the water into the boat, stuck the guy through in the front, and the guy grabbed a machete, I think, that was close to him, and had to run the guy through and then push him over the top. And he said it happened so fast. It's not like he sat and thought about the ramifications of what was happening. And he came home and had to have years of therapy. I mean, he couldn't sleep. There's PSD.
Oh,
and he told my brother's class was, I think, one of the first few classes that he actually told. And I mean, it was 15, 20 years since it had happened, and the guy was still dealing with the aftermath of that. So I think this is one of these situations where you just don't want ever to have to go through that kind of an experience, and you know, to have to defend yourself like that, and especially if you get into some physical altercation, it's bad.
Right. So it seems like there's two groups. There's one where you kind of have time to process and think and plan. When you say, you know, when the Bible instructs never to avenge yourself, that's something thought out, planned, systematic, like I'm going to do this, this, and this to this person, saying maybe you shouldn't do that, versus something where you need to respond and react in that second, that split second.
I feel very protective over children. You know, if somebody was trying to harm my kids, you know, I think there's something that would just boil my blood like pretty quickly. So. It's hard to say how I would react in that situation. Naturally, I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I would hopefully want to you know, lovingly disarm the situation. But in the case where if somebody was trying to hurt my child, I think it would I'd turn into Papa Bear.
Do we have any examples in the Bible where somebody was defending themselves? I mean, Jesus went all the way to the cross, never defended himself. I mean,
Paul publicly defended his honor. I can't remember which one of the books where they were kind of claiming that he was like wrongfully taking money, I think it was. I can't remember. I have to look this up. But you know, he was kind of setting the record straight. He's never done anything wrong, and so he had to publicly set the record straight, where people were trying to tarnish his reputation.
What about self-defense? Like somebody's trying to take your wife, and
I mean, Samson, you know, took out 1,000 people with donkey jawbone, dude. Spirit of God came over.
That's true, man.
That's a big difference, though, because in a lot of those situations, you mentioned the key point in that is, you know, just before Samson did something amazing, it says, and the Spirit of the Lord, you know, there's all kinds of, it's interesting. There's a lot of, I guess, biblical perspective on both sides. You know, it says that Abraham had 400 men in his household trained for war. You know, he went and rescued Lot.
When David took out the bear, it says right before that, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David and he rent the bear apart, you know. So, you know, it wasn't...
David killed Goliath.
Yeah, I mean, he was defending the honor of his God and his people, and, you know, so yeah. And, I mean, he carried that head around.
Really?
I mean, yeah,
No.
he chopped that head
Are you
around, and he
serious?
literally went around with like a trophy, like, here's his head.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
read
knew
the
he cut it
story.
off,
It's
though.
gnarly. Like there's some stories like I have to jump over those kind of things when I read them to my kids because it's like, how do you explain that?
Right.
It's tricky now though, because then you're dealing with a time of, God inspired me to do this. And now if you're walking around and saying, well, God told me to off this guy,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a different kind of situation. It doesn't quite work the same way now as it did then, you know.
So was it the Spirit led David to kill Goliath, or did he just have enough faith? Like, my God's big, I can handle this.
I think in specifically David's situation, when he got into that altercation, what's amazing is he had the faith that was literally like, when he's like, oh, you a dog? Am I a dog that you're coming to me with your sticks and your stones? And he's like, and then he starts cursing him in his gods. And David says, no, I come to you in the living God. Like,
The name of the Lord of hosts.
yeah, it's like all of a sudden, man, you are not fighting me. You're picking a fight with God. And God honored that.
I feel like the God of the New Testament is a lot more discreet than the God of the Old Testament. That doesn't mean he still doesn't look out for his people. He does. Think of all of the apostles. They got into situations where, the average person would just be like, are you kidding me? Let's go to war.
Right.
But as in prison, what did God do? Rescued them, and they just walked out of the prison gates. I feel like God will come through, and it doesn't always have to be in a grand supernatural way. It could also be with our fellow peers, but it'll be done in a way at the end of the day it will glorify him.
Was it Elisha, where he led like 185,000 soldiers or whatever into Samaria? They're like, what do we do with them? Do we smite them? Do we smite them? King of Israel was like ready to off him, and they're just like, no, feed him and give him water and let him go.
It's like, what kind of tactic?
And that seems kind of contrary to an Old Testament time.
But that's a rad story.
It is.
What did that do for the end result?
They never came and troubled Israel again, it says.
So I think where there's two roads how you could handle the situation, there's enough examples of, listen, if you really do heed the advice like Jesus gave or like the Bible, and love your enemies, do good to those that hate you and are spitefully doing evil against you, like the result I think will be more lasting if they never ever came after them again after that situation. That would be, I think, a very wise approach.
For sure. At the end of the day, I hope Eminem doesn't respond to Nick Cannon's diss tracks, and that these two resolve their beef outside of the public eye. And they just come together and just, apologize and kind of let it go. 10 years is a long time to be harboring this.
It takes a lot of energy to harbor hatred. And when you kind of keep that alive, look at the result of what happened to Tupac and Biggie Smalls, right? It just got fueled and fueled and fueled until like people died. So in this kind of a situation, I think if you're wanting to learn something from this, the fastest way to resolve it is with forgiveness and love. But by all means, that doesn't mean ignore the issue. You should go to someone and say, hey, you said something ill against my wife or whatever like this. I don't agree with that. Is there a way that we can resolve this and get past it? I think that'd be the best way to deal with it. And then, of course, if there just continues to be public shaming, I think it's okay for you to publicly make a statement, like you said. I'd make a rebuttal or something like that, and just talk about it in that way. But that would probably be a last resort. And then if that doesn't work out, call Cousin Vinny. He'll take care of it.
Personally, I'd probably just not respond.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn that, in junior high, because I got picked on a lot. And the more you let people, when they throw stuff at you, if they want a reaction,
Right.
True.
you give them that reaction, they're going to keep doing it.
I'm
So if you just
I'm going through this with my children right now, and it's like, I keep telling my son, she wants you to get upset.
Yes.
If you give her a hug, it would be done.
That's what I'm saying. What if the response is, good and chill and either,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
going the
what can
extra
you do?
mile.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready for that, if you at least just back off and just don't do anything. What are they going to do? they can keep saying stuff, but eventually, if they don't get a
boring, yeah.
response, it's going to be like, this is not going anywhere.
It's true. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in this discussion.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for watching. Every single Friday, you're here and you're watching and you're supporting. We really appreciate you. And we'd love to hear what you think about this topic. Leave it down in the comment section below. And while you're there, check out our website, littlelightstudios.tv. Do we have any deals available right now?
Not right now, but I should have put in a plug if you want to learn more about the martial arts topic. We actually have a video. It's on our YouTube channel for free. It's called The Dragon Revealed.
An old Chinese proverb says, "It is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness." Today, there is a growing infatuation with the spiritual practices of the Far East. Dark secrets kept hidden and buried within the teachings of the masters for nearly 2,000 years, known only amongst those who practice such arts until today. Who are the masters, gurus, and senseis which founded these mystical arts? How did these men develop such extraordinary skills, powers, and abilities? And from whence came their inspiration? Were these arts originally designed merely as self-defense and healing? Or is there something elusive and much darker working behind the scenes? Is it possible to divorce these Eastern art forms from their spiritual roots? Is there a hidden purpose behind the move to join these ancient religious practices with the Christian faith? Witness the journey of one man's life on his quest for truth, a life of more than 24 years training in traditional martial arts, energy work, and Chinese medicine. Follow his path as a student in these mystical art forms, from beginner to black belt, from novice to 5th Dan, and a high-level discipline in Kung Fu, Tai Chi, and Chinese Qigong. See how the God of the Bible transformed his heart from a path of self-destruction and brought him into his marvelous light. Learn why we are now witnessing a worldwide flood of Eastern mysticism and occult philosophies. Is there a reason why these once ancient religious practices are now being so widely accepted and portrayed in today's movies, video games, magazines, and secular as well as Christian literature?
What's on your t-shirt, Mikey?
Light exposing darkness. We got this and a lot of other cool t-shirts. Pray for your haters. That'd be a good one for this one too. So
That's true.
check out those shirts. It really helps support us. It's a good way to, break the ice when you want to witness to somebody. So.
And there's always Patreon. You guys can check out that. We got a lot of cool perks on there. You get early access. You even get some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
You can kind of see what things we talk about that we don't quite release to the public. But check us out. It's a way to support our work, and we thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and we will see you guys next week on LED Live. Bye-bye.